Bless you.
Hocus Pocus wasn't born a family comedy. It began as a bedtime curse about a boy doomed to live forever as a cat. But once Disney got hold of it, chaos took over. Spielberg walked away before the magic even started. Bette Midler swooped in and saved the project, and the flop Disney buried clawed its way back as a cult classic. These are 20 weird facts about Hocus Pocus, and buried in the spells and the smoke, it began as a bedtime story that refused to stay buried. This wasn't just a Halloween movie, it was a curse that took decades to land. Number 1. Before the witches cackled on screen, before Bette Midler belted her anthem, Hocus Pocus was just a bedtime story. Producer David Kirshner spun it up one night for his young daughter, a boy cursed to live forever as a black cat, a curse that twisted love into loss. She leaned in, wide-eyed, caught between fear and fascination. Kirshner noticed, if it could grip his daughter like that, maybe it could grip the world, so he wrote it down. He didn't start with Disney. He started with illustrations, dark, moody sketches of witches and a lonely boy trapped in fur. He shopped it around as a children's book idea. Publishers passed, but he didn't stop. Kirshner pitched it as a film, carrying that same bedtime chill into Hollywood boardrooms. At first, no one bit. Too strange, too dark, too un-Disney. But slowly, the idea caught fire. A fairy tale that wasn't sweet, one that made kids shiver and laugh in the same breath. And that's how a quiet story whispered to a child in bed grew into one of the strangest cult movies Disney ever made. Because sometimes the scariest spells don't come from ancient books. They come from parents spinning stories in the dark.
Let's brew another batch.
You hag! There are not enough children in the world to make thee young and beautiful.
Uh-oh. Sisters, did you hear what he called you?
Number 2. Before it became the campy cult comedy we know, the title on the script read something different. Halloween House. And the story inside matched the name. No musical numbers, no candy-coated gags, just 12-year-olds walking into real danger, witches that didn't wink, curses that didn't break with a laugh. Disney looked at it and saw a problem. Too dark, too risky, too far from the glossy Halloween they could market. At one point, executives even toyed with shrinking it into a made-for-TV movie. Small budget, small audience, safe. But the idea wouldn't stay buried. Draft after draft softened the edges. The children stayed, but the tone shifted. Darker chills turned into slapstick scares, and the witches became equal parts frightening and funny. The final rewrite dropped the old name too. Halloween House vanished, replaced by a title that felt sillier, stranger, easier to sell. Hocus Pocus. What started as a nightmare leaned toward comedy instead, and in the trade, something magical happened. The movie stopped being just another Halloween ghost story. It became a spell no one could quite define.
Winifred Sanderson,
Yes?
I will ask thee one final time.
Yes?
Number 3. The script for Hocus Pocus floated through Hollywood, landing on the desk of Steven Spielberg at the height of his Amblin success. On paper, it looked perfect. The king of fantasy shepherding Disney's next big Halloween film. But Spielberg saw a problem. At the time, Disney was a rival, not a partner. Supporting the project would mean giving his competition the advantage. So he politely walked away. The irony, within a few years, he partnered with Disney on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Arachnophobia, both massive successes. Had Spielberg taken Hocus Pocus, it might have looked very different. Instead, it remained Disney's oddball experiment, a gamble that only paid off decades later. Number 4. The witches we know almost looked nothing like the ones on screen. Rosie O'Donnell was offered Mary Sanderson. She turned it down, worried the character was too dark, too mean for her image. Cloris Leachman, the queen of eccentric comedy, circled the role of Winifred. In another version, it could have been her cackle echoing through Salem instead of Bette Midler's. And for Max, Disney had their eyes on Leonardo DiCaprio. Fresh off This Boy's Life, the teen star was Hollywood's new golden boy. He met with the studio, read the script, and almost signed on. Almost. But he chose What's Eating Gilbert Grape instead, a move that earned him his first Oscar nomination. Each decision reshaped the movie. O'Donnell gone, Leachman gone, DiCaprio gone. And into that space stepped Bette Midler, Kathy Najimy, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Omri Katz. It didn't look like a dream lineup. Not then, but it worked like alchemy. Because sometimes casting isn't about who says yes, it's about who says no, and leaves room for magic. Number 5. For years, Hocus Pocus drifted in limbo. The script was passed around, revised, softened, nearly forgotten. Disney didn't know what to do with it. Too dark for kids, too silly for adults. A project waiting to die. Then Bette Midler read it. By 1992, she was already a legend. The divine Miss M, with Grammys, Tonys, and hit films behind her. She could have chosen anything, but she chose Winifred Sanderson. Midler didn't just accept the part. She claimed it. She told Disney it was one of the best roles she'd ever seen. She promised to sink her teeth into every line, every cackle, every spell. Her passion reignited the project, convincing executives that if Midler believed, audiences might too. The production snapped back to life. Kathy Najimy and Sarah Jessica Parker joined her, completing the trio. The film finally had its soul. Years later, Midler still called Winifred her favorite role of all time. Because this wasn't just another paycheck, it was an actress saving a movie, with the sheer force of wanting to play a witch louder and prouder than anyone else.
My 3 favorite witches.
Are you broads a little old to be trick-or-treating?
We'll be younger in the morning.
Number 6. In 1993, computer effects weren't an option. To make the Sanderson Sisters fly, the crew used practical rigs, heavy harnesses suspended from wires, yanked and guided by technicians. It wasn't glamorous. Each flight meant hours strapped into uncomfortable gear, dangling high above the stage while grips struggled to keep the witches aloft. Midler, Najimy, and Parker joked about it later, but the strain was real. And that's what makes the flying scenes feel so vivid. The witches weren't pixels. They were performers balancing, wobbling, and reacting to the jolts of the wires. Real women hanging in real air. The magic wasn't digital. It was pure theater. Number 7. When Doug Jones played Billy Butcherson, his resurrection came with one unforgettable gag. Moths fluttering out of his mouth. And yes, they were real. Special effects teams built a small pocket inside a latex mouthpiece, safe enough for Jones to hold the insects without swallowing them. When the moment came, he opened wide and the moths escaped, squirming and flapping straight into the air. Jones endured it without complaint, committed to making Billy feel authentic even in grotesque detail. And that realism worked. What could have been a throwaway jump scare became one of the film's most chilling images, because audiences sensed it wasn't fake. Number 8. The lightning bolt Winifred zaps Max with wasn't the only shock he got on Hocus Pocus. Teen star Omri Katz, just 16 at the time, showed up to set one day acting different. His timing was off. His reactions felt sluggish. Director Kenny Ortega paused the scene and pulled him aside. Katz admitted it. He'd smoked earlier for a Disney movie with Bette Midler on set. Ortega didn't fire him. He gave him a stern lecture, sharp enough to snap him back to reality, then sent him straight back into the scene. The show had to go on. And when the cameras rolled, that jolt of nervous energy bled into Max's performance. On screen, he flinches under Midler's glare and her lightning crackle. Off screen, he was still stung by his director's wrath. The irony, that moment became one of Max's most electrifying scenes. Because sometimes movie magic doesn't come from special effects. It comes from a teenager learning, the hard way, that witches aren't the only ones who can burn you.
Max Dennison.
Allison.
Oh, Allison.
Number 9. Hocus Pocus wasn't always campy mischief. In its early drafts, the witches were darker, and Mary had one of the darkest gags of all. The script included a scene where she rolled a baby out of a grocery store in a shopping cart. Not a doll, not a prank, an actual infant, stolen in broad daylight. The image was so disturbing that Disney cut it before cameras ever rolled. But the shadow of that moment lingered. Fans later discovered traces of it in storyboards and notes, evidence of how far the film nearly went. The Sandersons weren't meant to be just funny. They were meant to scare, to shock, to lean into their hunger for children. Decades later, when Hocus Pocus 2 arrived, the witches once again found themselves in a store, but this time the danger was gone, replaced with comedy. Instead of baby snatching, they wandered through a Walgreens, baffled by lotions, potions, and fluorescent aisles. The sequel turned menace into slapstick, but for fans who knew about the original deleted scene, it was a reminder of how the Sandersons once balanced on the edge of true horror. Even in Disney's world, that line between playful fright and real terror was always thinner than it seemed. Number 10. Salem wasn't Salem at all. Much of the film was shot on the Warner Brothers Ranch in Burbank, California, a backlot with streets recycled for decades of productions. Look closely and you'll see it. The fountain where the kids regroup, it's the same one in the opening credits of Friends. Max's neighborhood. Years later, it became the backdrop of American Beauty, where Thora Birch, Dani herself, returned as a teenager. The same street even appears in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. The Sandersons weren't just haunting Salem, they were sharing space with sitcoms and Oscar winners. Proof that movie magic often begins on the same few blocks of Hollywood pavement. Number 11. Thackeray Binks looks seamless on screen, but it took a whole team to bring him to life. Sean Murray played the human version, but his voice wasn't used. Instead, Jason Marsden dubbed the lines, giving Binks his sly, witty tone. And then there were the cats. Up to 9 trained felines rotated through filming, each with its own specialty. One could jump, another could sit still, a third handled close-ups. When none of them cooperated, an animatronic stepped in to fill the gaps. It was messy, but it worked. By the end, audiences believed in a single cursed boy trapped in a cat's body, a patchwork of actors, animals, and puppets stitched into one character. Number 12. Disney could have put Winifred in the standard black witch's gown, but Bette Midler wanted more. She worked closely with costume designer Mary Vogt to create something flamboyant, memorable, and instantly iconic. Layers of green and purple replaced flat black. Gold embroidery shimmered under stage lights. A splash of sparkle gave Winifred her theatrical edge. Midler even pushed for details that reflected the character's vanity, making the outfit as eccentric as her cackle. The result was a witch who wasn't just scary, she was dazzling. Winifred Sanderson didn't fade into the shadows. She strutted into Halloween history, stitched together by the star who played her.
I smell. Yes. Winnie, I smell. Yes. I smell scrod. Scrod, yeah, it's a bottom dweller. You cook it sometimes with lovely wood.
Number 13. One of the film's funniest sisterly quirks wasn't in the script. During a hectic shoot, Kathy Najimy suggested that the witches link arms and chant a calming circle to settle down. Ortega loved it, kept the cameras rolling, and the bit made it straight into the film. That single beat gave the Sandersons a new layer. They weren't just villains, they were siblings. Flustered, goofy, constantly trying to keep their chaos under control. Najimy's improv turned into one of the witches' most beloved rituals, proving that sometimes the smallest unscripted choices give characters their soul.
Ugly?
No.
She really hurt my feelings.
She's jealous.
She don't even know me.
You know, I always wanted a child, and now I think I'll have one.
Toast!
Number 14. For Sarah Jessica Parker, playing a witch in Salem turned out to be more personal than anyone knew. Years later, on the show Who Do You Think You Are?, Parker discovered that one of her ancestors, Esther Elwell, had been accused during the Salem witch trials. Esther's case ended differently than many. The charges were dropped before she could be executed, but the eerie connection was undeniable. Parker had unknowingly stepped into her family's history, embodying a role tied to her bloodline. It gave her performance a strange edge in hindsight. An actress famous for comedy carrying the ghost of a real accusation from centuries past. Number 15. Winifred Sanderson's insults weren't just Disney wordplay, they had teeth. Bette Midler wasn't content with cheap rhymes. She wanted her witch to sound rooted in real history, half Broadway showstopper, half 17th century menace. So the creative team dug into archaic spellbooks and dusty collections of Elizabethan insults. They pulled phrases that hadn't been spoken aloud in centuries. Words like trollop, maggoty, pox-ridden. They blended them with Midler's theatrical bite, turning every curse into a mix of comedy and authenticity. Even the cadence was deliberate. The sharp musical rhythm made her invocations feel both funny and dangerous, a melody hiding real venom. On set, Midler reveled in the language. Every time she spat out a barbed line, she wasn't just acting. She was channeling something ancient, something lifted from the pages of forgotten lore. That's why Winifred's dialogue doesn't fade into camp. It lingers. It sounds like words you shouldn't laugh at, but you do anyway, because behind every joke was a whisper from history, carried into the present on a witch's breath.
Bobble, I'm in trouble.
Tell me, friend, what is this contraption?
I call it a bus.
A bus. A what? And its purpose?
To convey gorgeous creatures such as yourselves to your most forbidden desires.
Number 16. The music of Hocus Pocus sounds seamless now, but behind the scenes, it was chaos. James Horner was hired to compose the score. He never wrote a note. Scheduling conflicts pulled him away before the project began. Suddenly, with the release date looming, Disney needed a miracle. Enter John Debney. He was given 2 weeks, 14 frantic days, to create an entire score for a Halloween fantasy packed with witches, spells, and slapstick. He worked around the clock, stitching together cues on almost no sleep. Meanwhile, Sarah Jessica Parker recorded Come Little Children, a haunting lullaby that slipped into the film's DNA, and Roxette's song Almost Unreal, originally intended for Hocus Pocus, got diverted to Super Mario Bros. Instead. The result wasn't a single artist's vision, it was fragments, pieces, scraps stitched into something whole. And yet somehow, the patchwork worked. The score blended comedy with menace, chaos with melody, exactly like the film itself. Because in Salem, even the music was conjured like a spell, thrown together at the last second, and unforgettable forever. Number 17. One of the film's strangest cameos happens when the Sandersons mistake a suburban couple in costumes for the real devil and his wife. The scene plays like pure parody, but the casting added its own layer of weird. The devil was played by Gary Marshall, while his nagging wife was played by Penny Marshall. On screen, they bicker like husband and wife. Off screen, they were brother and sister. That twist gave the whole gag a sly, surreal energy. A fake devil, a fake marriage, real siblings pretending otherwise. The Sandersons weren't the only ones playing dress up in that house. Number 18. When Hocus Pocus opened in July 1993, it didn't feel like Halloween magic. It felt like failure. Critics were baffled. Too campy for horror, too spooky for family comedy. Audiences stayed away, and Disney took a $16 million loss. For years, the film was dismissed as a misfire, a summer release that didn't know what it wanted to be. But then October came, and with it, cable reruns. Every fall, the movie returned like clockwork. Kids stumbled on it during marathons. Parents rewatched it with nostalgia. Slowly, a new generation grew up not with the flop, but with the rerun, and the Sanderson Sisters became part of the season itself. By the 2000s, Hocus Pocus was a ritual. Pumpkins on porches, costumes in closets, the witches on TV. In 2018, Freeform's marathon pulled in 8.2 million viewers in 1 week alone. A film once buried by critics rose from the grave because fans wouldn't let it die. That's the true magic of Hocus Pocus. Not the spells on screen, but the resurrection cast by time, nostalgia, and October nights.
Oh man, how come it's always the ugly chicks that stay out late? Chicks?
Number 19. By 2015, the Sanderson sisters had clawed their way out of flop status and into Disney royalty. That year, they headlined their own live show, Hocus Pocus Villain Spelltacular, at Mickey's Not-So-Scary Halloween Party in Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. The stage show mixed Broadway-level spectacle with Halloween camp. Midler, Najimy, and Parker weren't there, but the energy of their witches lived on as dancers, singers, and pyrotechnics turned them into theme park icons. What began as a movie Disney barely supported was now the crown jewel of its Halloween season, a resurrection worthy of any witch's spell. Number 20. 3 decades after Hocus Pocus hit theaters, fans finally got a way to bring Salem home. In 2023, LEGO released a massive 2,316-piece Sanderson Sisters cottage. It wasn't just a house. The set included the bubbling cauldron, the spellbook, the graveyard gate, even a tiny black cat for Thackeray Binks, and of course, 6 minifigures: Winifred, Mary, Sarah, Max, Danny, and Allison. For fans who grew up watching the film every October, it was more than a toy. It was a shrine, a way to conjure the magic, brick by brick, long after the credits rolled. Bonus fact: after the flop of 1993, Disney had no interest in returning to Salem. But every October, as the film rose again on cable, the demand grew louder. Petitions, fan clubs, rewatch marathons. Even Bette Midler and Sarah Jessica Parker campaigned to bring the sisters back. In 2018, a book sequel kept the embers glowing. Nearly 30 years later, Disney Plus finally gave fans what they wanted. Hocus Pocus 2 dropped in 2022 and broke streaming records. A spell first cast in the 90s had finally found its second life. Hocus Pocus wasn't supposed to last. It was too weird for critics, too campy for Disney, too small for theaters. And yet, it survived. On cable reruns, on Halloween marathons, in costumes, stage shows, and even Lego bricks. What began as a bedtime story grew into one of Disney's strangest legends, a film that failed once, only to live forever. If this one still casts its spell on you every October, drop a comment. Tell us what magical classic we should conjure up next, because witches don't stay buried, they wait. And every Halloween, the spell begins again.